So today we're going to be talking through Notice G, a new submission portal for that process. We have Carl here, who is going to be going through a lot of the background, global goods, digital square, Notice G, and then I'll be giving us an overview of the platform. A couple of quick ground rules: please stay muted throughout the presentation and hold all questions until the end. We will go through the presentation relatively quickly so that we have ample time to discuss what we cover at the end of the slides. So with that, Carl, I think I can go ahead and start handing that over to you.
Thank you, Maria, and welcome everybody. In light of introductions, I am Carl Furry, the Deputy Director of Global Goods here at Digital Square, and we're really excited to have you all online today. Looking forward as we launch Notice G, which ironically and excitingly aligns with global goods, which is really what the focus of this notice is. So we appreciate you taking your time today. Please feel free to continue to introduce yourselves in the chat, your name, your affiliation, in terms of your organization. That'd be great. And feel free to append your organization's name to the end of your name in the participants list. It's always great seeing who we're having online today. So with that, I'm going to jump into the next slide. So Maria, I think you've got the con there, so we'll move on. Welcome to Digital Square. A little bit about us for those who are running across us for the first time. Digital Square at Part looks to collaborate with ministries of health to align really interoperable, adaptable digital technologies to the local health needs and focus on how do we bring partners together to improve the global community in whole, particularly focused at health. And how do we look at advancing designs of global tools as well as their utilization, how one pays for them, and general approaches to tool adoption and design moving forward. How do we do this? We work a lot with donors to identify investments to ensure long-term sustainability and success of some of these tools and technologies, as well as key funding for advancing innovative ideas and design patterns forward. And I think I can say with a relatively strong level of confidence that in the last half decade, we have been one of the top funders for the adoption of HL7 Fire in the LMIC and open source software spaces, so particularly for these tools. So we're excited for that. We may not be the top, there may be others working in this space too, but we're very proud to be part of the team pushing that forward. And that's just an example of the kind of things we like to invest in and move the needle on. And we also work with innovators, which I'm hoping many of you online today will be able to join the Global Goods Innovators community, representing your different tools and technologies. And we work with yourselves and different innovators to look at how do we advance this space, whether it be generally in terms of design patterns, architectures, what is in a sense trending as the next generation of investments, what are some of the lessons we learn from each other, and how do we share that globally to really look at how do we raise the ocean so everybody goes up together in that space. And then we also work a lot with our government and country-based technology experts to see how do we encourage country-led innovation, country adoption, country ownership. We're very much excited about the idea of localization of innovation and support and long-term impact. So it's an exciting space for us to be in. And really, the question we should all be asking is, why do we do this? Why do we get out of bed in the morning? What do we look at advancing? And it's really to say, how do we improve health outcomes? Looking to make sure that we have accessible health equity, and how do we make sure that there's access to care for everybody who needs it. So as we move on to the next slide, just a quick summary of how do we do that within Digital Square is that we have a broader vision, which looks, as I mentioned a little earlier, at the appropriate use of digitally enabled health services to close the health equity gap. And we want to make sure that we are able to move that needle by ensuring that health leaders have the right information, the right resources necessary for digital transformation. And so to address and really mobilize that mission, we have three key work areas. We have our alignment and co-investment area, where, or what we often refer to as result area 1, colloquially in-house here. And that's our team that works quite a lot to ensure that how are we aligning in terms of donor strategies, investment alignments, how do we pull together funding and investments to really move the needle forward in some key areas, and what are some of the broader strategies that we need to help advocate for on the broader half. We have the global goods team, which I have the privilege of leading and facilitating here. And really my job in the morning is I wake up wondering, how do we make the world a better place? How do we create an environment that strengthens the technologies that are out there that are making an impact? and how do we make them more accessible and more visible to the broader community so that they continue to make the impact that they're designed to do. And we also partner through our result area 3 or our regional and country systems, where we have a team that focuses on country buy-ins. These are countries that align to our principles, want to partner with us as we help to facilitate often some of their design and investment strategies. And this is an area where we really pride ourselves in trying to work a lot more with local innovators, respecting the country leadership, and growing the local economy to make sure that the tools and solutions that are becoming impactful have the best opportunity to last. So with that, a little bit more about global goods as we're getting into today. So we look to associate a lot of investments through our open applications process. Those of you who've been around since some of the early applications will be quite familiar with this. It's a relatively innovative approach and quite open in the sense that ideas are held out in the open, a very open palm approach, inviting the community to collaborate and look at something and understand what's happening in the broader space and how do we collaboratively move together. We've had some exciting spaces of watching what some would deem competitors actually end up cooperating and really have this competition approach of moving the needle forward, and some of our earlier calls. But today, we're really looking at Notice G and how do we use a similar pattern and principle to move that forward. Broader within our R2 space, we also, sorry, Maria, if you can go back one slide, that'd be great. We have quite a bit of experience with our different technical teams, providing some insight into the awards we manage. We also look at how do we help connect different communities together so that they're able to leverage the experience from each other, be it in members having a seamless transition between the two spaces, or even community engagers and the leaders in those spaces are starting to share experience with saying, well, how do you do this? How do you really move the needle on growing your community? What are some of the lessons that we can learn from each other? Or what are some of the common challenges that we're all looking to address? An example would be, how do we get more people involved in our community? Short answer, we don't have a silver bullet for that. But if you're interested in that, we have 3 or 4 people that come to mind right now who are asking the same question. And this is the value of being part of the global good spaces. It is a peer group and community to drive things forward. We also encourage at-scale adoption of global goods and solutions, and very much look at how do we encourage the global goods to align to leading design patterns, trends, and architectures, as well as we invest a lot of our time to identify funding to support investments to see tools move toward that space. All right, Maria, across to the next one, thanks. So a little bit more about our global goods. If you're here today, you've probably read Notice G0. If you haven't, I will recommend you have a look at that a little bit more. But to summarize, Digital Square global goods are digital health tools that are open source, have no barrier to access for services, which we'll get to later, are available under an open content license. They're supported by an anchor organization or a strong community. They have clear governance structures. They've been deployed at scale and are used across multiple countries and instances, and have demonstrated effectiveness. And we really want to encourage, and we want to see these tools that are being designed to be interoperable and are stepping up to that particular mantle of showcasing the interoperability, and really want to move towards the sustainability side of things. I don't think anybody wants to see a technology fire up and become impactful and then fizzle out in the future, and where people are relying on that. So we're excited to see how we can move that forward. We also have had a few questions in the past. So what is your relationship with the Digital Public Goods Alliance, and how do things work on that side? So we do have a very close relationship and overlap with the DPG, and we're very closely aligned to a lot of their standards in it. So in short, Digital Square Global Goods can be seen as a collection of DPGs that are focused at health, that are impactful, scalable, at use in different contexts, really mature in their spaces, with a focus on interoperability and being more deployable. So I like to have this little mantra when I chat to the different teams that all Digital Square software global goods can be seen as DPGs, but not all DPGs are global goods. And that's because many DPGs are in other sectors outside of health and wellness in a range of areas. So this little diagram is a nice one to keep in the back of your head. And it's important to remember because the DPG requirement comes up as one of our asks in our application. Thanks, Maria. So I mentioned in this definition 3 different types of global goods. So if we move to the next slide, you'll see the summary that we have 3 types of global goods here. We have software global goods, we have service global goods, and we have content global goods. And we have 3 different calls coming up in this initiative first call notice G0 is focused at software global goods. And these are software tools that are free and open source that are used to manage, analyze, and transmit health-related data. Services follow a similar pattern, obviously a service, and content are really those solutions and content aspects that are driving things forward, be they designs, patterns, architectures, message structures, and we're actively working at defining that as we go ahead. But the question that often comes up is like, where did the need and the emergence of global goods come from? So as we go to the next slide there, Maria, please. So we've seen over the years, and Digital Square has been around, oh man, I should really get this right. I think it's about 7-8 years now, with one of the early notices. But historically, there are often many pilots looking at solving a problem, and these are implemented by a range of groups, organizations, individuals, bringing things forward. But often what's happened around this has led to a fragmentation and competing priorities, as well as additional burdens on the health systems. And this is an example, if you recognize that map, I believe that is Uganda. Years ago, looked at the situation, and that is a mapping of mHealth projects running through the country, which propagated a moratorium on tool implementation until under ministerial approval. And that's a pattern we're seeing a lot today, ensuring ministries are aligned to things. But we've also seen that while there were many pilots, there were many technologies that were at use and implemented at scale. Two examples are IRIS and DHIS2, which are tools that are used across multiple geographies, solving problems, and have a history of being around. So with that, the sense started to evolve that there are these tools out there that can be seen as global goods. So it's exciting that we've had the opportunity to really gather these together and advocate for them a little bit more. So what have we been doing in terms of the support of digital health global goods? Is really there's been some key focus areas on this. So Maria, if you can go to the next slide, that'd be great. We've focused over the last little while in terms of the incorporation and the use of standards and towards interoperability. It's been one of our cornerstone aspects of Digital Square. We truly believe in interoperability and the use of correct architecture and health standards to move data effectively. We want to see tools and technologies aligned to support different health terminologies, and we've invested in tools that make that a bit easier. For example, the Open Concept Lab. We also promote global guidance and technical direction and standards, such as the WHO's antenatal care digital adaptation kits, or the DDCC vitals VS work that came out and we funded under notice F1, F0, F1, and F2. There were a few things going in there, as well as your patient level monitoring white paper. So we've had some exciting opportunities of while these guidances come out, we've had the opportunity of saying, well, here is some investment to see technologies aligned to this and showcase how it's impactful. And then generally, we continue to strive in each of our funding calls to create opportunities for global goods to be more implementable. We have the term shelf readiness, which is attributed to the fact that we want tools to be able to be picked off the shelf and used, and whether that is advancing their quality assurance metrics, whether it is making sure that more information is available so that they're easily selectable by decision makers, right through to how easily are you packaged and configured to be deployed using DevOps aspects of things. So it's been an exciting journey. So all towards the idea of how do we see a mature global good? So mature global goods, as we're looking at it right now, and particularly we're focusing on software today. Mature global good carries the characteristics of being open source, backed by a strong community for clear governance, funded by multiple sources, and deployed at significant scale and designed to be interoperable. Each of these facets have been reviewed and identified by the Digital Health and Interoperability Working Groups through our maturity models and a few other things to say these are meaningful markers that we believe are a marker of a mature tool that is impactful and being used at scale in these spaces. So over the last few years, we've been collecting the self-reported implementation countries where these tools are sitting. And as you see on the next slide on our map, you'll see that the global goods have a, dare I say, world presence. And this is by no means a full representation of it. We realize a lot of this is self-reported, but it is exciting to see the scale and the breadth and width of really where these tools are reporting to be used. And the number of different global goods in different spaces. So this is an exciting aspect. We've often been asked, like, do you have more information about this? And what we then tend to do is pass those donors and investors into the key communities itself and say, hey, would you mind following up with this particular donor? They're very interested in your reference that you had about your deployment in, let's say, the Antarctic, monitoring penguin health, some fun things on that side. But more in terms of the global good, while we're excited to see the scale of it, we work very closely with the World Health Organization, particularly as we look at how do we classify the global goods. And we leverage the DH&I classification and categorization that was published a good number of years ago. And so each of the global goods that we have are mapped against system categories. And you'll see that there are system categories for geographic information systems, research information systems, data exchange and interoperability. So it's an exciting space for us to say we're able to map these to what their primary focus is. And we recognize global goods sometimes can be split across multiple areas. We take that into account. We also look at what are some of the broader interventions that we're dealing with across there with the classifications too. If you go back one slide, Maria, if you don't mind, looking at, are you focusing on the client side, the healthcare providers, the health system managers, and the data services? Again, key data points, and all of these are open secrets. So these are questions that we're asking for. We use to map your tools against as you apply into G0. More than that, as we look towards classifying and mapping these tools, we've had the exciting aspect of working out a global goods maturity model. And this is available on our wiki, also linked to from the OAP site, itself and Notice G. This is how global goods self-report their maturity. These tools have often been asked, are you using it as a evaluation metric for a pass or fail? The truth and answer about this is a technology, this is a model that was originally designed to enable community leaders and tool architects to understand how they would measure their maturity from a global perspective. This model was developed as part of the DH&I working group, and it's a way of a technology that, oh, fantastic, we have a low or a high or a medium score across these key areas. Let me understand what I need to invest in or focus on to move my maturity. It's also been a fun space for donors to look at this and go, I'm understanding the maturity of these tools. If we're wanting to move one forward, where can we invest to advance them? If, for example, maybe in terms of country utilization, a tool may be sitting on medium and need to trigger across into a high maturity and it would need one or two countries. And the concept of, well, how do we make that happen? But particularly today, we've also noted that this is a very good measure on how well you meet the definition of a global good. And this forms part of the inspiration from a lot of the questions that come up out of Notice G0 to bring to life. And then finally, before we actually jump into the Notice G, when everything comes together, what do we do with this? Well, besides us having an exciting community of innovators and implementers and working quite a lot to build a webinar series where we're able to share information and really try to build a knowledge base around the space, advocate on behalf of these tools and country implementations, and try to make connections and links, we rarely do bring and publish a listing of these tools in the Global Goods Guidebook. So Global Goods, the version 3 of the guidebook was published earlier this year. It's been endorsed by a number of organizations. As you can see, we've got the Gates Foundation, GIZ, DIAL, we've got the DPGA, we have USAID, UNICEF, amongst a few. And this is a resource and an artifact that we actively use when talking in the broader space. And part of our R1 team, as you'll remember, are the investment and alignment groups to understand what tools are out there, what tools are making a difference in the space, and not just an exclusive, but which match to the definition of a global good, the way we've seen it come to life. So it's an exciting space to be. We're really excited for what we plan to do with the guidebook for version 4, and I'll get to that a little later when we talk about Notice G. So with that, I think that's probably a good segue to get into really what we're here to talk to today is the Notice G call. So a quick overview of Notice G. This is broadly the overall Notice G is about the identification and advancement of global goods. Particularly, it is a refresh of the global goods list, including digital tools that were not originally identified or have emerged in the last few years. And we want them to be featured in the global goods listing, be part of broader community and the guidebook itself. Questions that come up to me a few times like, wait, does this mean if I was already a global good, do I need to reapply? Yes. I'm going to say that again, yes. And the reason being is we want to make sure things are valid and still active. This list is a curated opportunity to showcase that things are still making a difference and moving forward. Historically, we've had some technologies withdraw their global good status as businesses change direction. We've had some companies deprecate some software and say that's no longer a viable tool. We're not moving that particular one forward. We're pivoting. And part of our responsibility as Digital Square is to maintain this listing. So we're excited for new applicants to come on board, and we're just as excited to get the same information and evaluate existing global goods against the metrics as how are they doing today. So again, we're also looking for these innovative partners who want to be part of this community and who are bringing ideas, designs, and experiences into the space. And we're seeing historically a lot of technologies focusing on their implementation on the African continent. We're excited to start seeing how we can engage more teams across the other areas of the world and what we can learn as we cross continental borders and share information around each other. But excitingly, the successful applicants from this particular call will really look to be invited to attend the Global Goods Innovators Meeting. I'll talk to you a bit more about that. We'll be part of the Global Goods list, and select applicants will receive travel funding to attend this, which will be held in Africa around about March next year. This is going to be a first of a kind for us, what we're doing. Historically, we've had innovators meetings on the back of the Global Digital Health Forum, and that has been fun to bring everybody together and just share experiences a little bit more. We have been known to have some fun where we have had many donors sit up front and let you as the community pepper them with questions, ask them for the off-the-record answers and ideas of where things are going, and really get a better understanding of what we're seeing in these broader organizations. This year, or rather 2023's Global Goods Innovators Meeting is set up to be an exciting space where we're going to hopefully bring some leaders around the standards and architecture groups together to really battle it out and share deep experiences about what's happening, how are things moving forward. We're excited to have each of you who are successful share your experiences, what you're working on, where it's going towards. We're inviting ministry officials and donors to attend this event and really have a Global Goods show-a-thon and give you the opportunity to showcase what you've got and bring this to life and really share and bring this knowledge space together. So it's an exciting project that's in the works, and we're hoping to find a fun country that's going to be exciting for all of us to be at next year and a great place to be. So I think if we get down into really G0, I think, so Maria, if we can move to the next slide, that'd be great. We have 3 rounds of calls happening right now. We are focusing each round on one of the global good types that we've identified previously. This round is software global goods. It's probably the most historic that we've had in terms of history of these being defined relatively clearly, comparison. Notice G1 will be focused at content global goods, and we are refining our definition of a maturity model around that, so you're able to evaluate your content global good towards it. And then there should be G3, not G0, sorry, G2. This will be looking at service global goods. And that is a fun, nuanced question. We've had some interesting ones. What constitutes a service global good? And we will tell you right after the break, which it probably means by the time we've got the definition fully agreed by our board and the various community itself. But it would hold true to the heart of what it means to be a global good, accessible, making an impact at scale, and being utilized. All right, so with that, we have this whole aspect open on the OAP. And if you go to the next slide, you would have already seen the Notice G0 call. Some quick highlights as we go through this. What we're looking at right now is technologies that apply for the software global good must meet the definition of a global good, and you can evaluate that yourself with the data that we give you. You must be open source, so please be prepared to share your license as well as a link to your code. By the definition of open source, it must be accessible. Registered or nominated as a DPG, we'll look for your link in that. It's a requirement to be part of it. Please complete your Digital Public Goods Alliance registration process and make sure you have that ready. And really, a lot of the questions that we're asking around here in this application that will be reviewed by our peer review committee will be to provide evidence to support the maturity that you see your technology at, and how do you bring that to life. So for a full detail, you obviously have a look at the Notice G page and see a little bit more around what we're asking and moving that forward. And so to one of the questions, like, why would I do this? What's in it for us? What is the reward of putting this time and investment into this particular space? So as all successful global goods that are selected will be recognized as global goods, will be included in our broader global goods community. And we have often opportunities that we restrict to access to the global goods community. An example was this last year, we had a last minute donor put some funding in front of us and said, we want to move this space forward. We ran a very rapid concept note call and issued 11 active awards that came out of that very quickly. And it was an exciting space. We limit the procurement tool to within the global goods space. We also, every successful global good will be invited to attend the Global Goods Innovators meeting. And as part of this, we've had investment from Amazon around your cloud computing credits, about a year's free AWS credits, as well as ongoing engagement as we engage with the big tech providers to understand what services and ideas can be available into the broader global goods space. With all things, there is a restriction, and we do have a limit in terms of the amount of actual funding we have on hand. And while our investment team continues to engage with additional donors and investors to identify who is wanting to contribute towards the broader Notice G space, we're looking at the moment to that select global good awardees will receive travel support to attend the Global Goods Innovators meeting happening, as well as a further sub-selection of awardees will receive up to $25,000 in fixed fee awards to support the documentation of the impact and scale that your technology is making. This is critical, as many times we're finding it in the modern world, groups are asking the question, what difference is this solution making? Where are they impactful? Show me some evidence around this. And it's something we want to be able to advocate excitingly on your behalf for to go ahead with. All right, so what does it mean? Like, what do you need from us to, as a global good to apply? So you'll find this information in the application itself, in the full PDF, as well as links to a digital format of both the application questions and the maturity model for you to review. Each of these questions are asking for evidence in relation to an aspect of maturity that you're saying you're at. And we encourage you to provide links if you don't have something. See if you can find it, or make sure that you're applying, at least responding to every required field that there is in that space. So with all that information coming together, part of what we do with the review of these particular awards is we leverage, as part of the open application process, it needs to be clearly understood that the reviews are not done by Digital Square staff. So Maria, as we go to the review and evaluation page, that'd be great. Part of our OAP is we have a peer review committee. This is, by definition, a collection of peers from the digital health space that have experience in technologies, impact, in country government leaders, academics, really looking, and they will be asked from their experience and their understanding, they'll be grouped up to evaluate your submission and how well it meets the prioritization framework in front of you. Again, this is very familiar. You'll see it very tightly linked to both the maturity model and the questions that are being asked. So we encourage you to look at this and understand, not just in terms of applying for a global good, but for yourselves, what are some of the things that the space is deeming important for technologies to move forward with? But summarizing it is, one, are you able to meet the definition of a global good, and are you a DPG? Have you at least applied for that? And the second criteria is the broader maturity of your tool as per the global goods maturity model and the evidence to support those particular maturity aspects. So yeah, the PRC will be reviewing that, and through our process, the final, that will be the identification of top global good candidates for final selection by the investment review committee, who make the final investment categories. All right, with that, I'm going to take a pause. I'm going to hand over to Maria, who's going to walk you through the OAP platform and the new admission application process. Thank you, Maria.
Thanks, Carl, for that really great background. Yeah, as you mentioned, I'll be giving an overview of our new submission portal, and this will be relatively high level. We're really excited to be using this new platform, specifically because it makes all of our lives a little bit easier, especially and it's being very intuitive to use, pretty straightforward and streamlined. So jumping in right away, this is our landing page. For those of you who have been with us for a while, or actually really ever before, this will look quite familiar. This is still our central repository for information about this notice cycle and our previous ones. So we definitely recommend coming here first, finding the information that you need. If you click through to this page, which you saw Carl present as well, we have the full text for the RFA on the left-hand side. And on the right-hand side, we also have quick links to a lot of the things that were mentioned, the guidebook, the maturity model, our map. We also have the timeline that's specific to Notice G0. And we have two nice big blue buttons. The top one is for the PDF of the full application, which we definitely recommend reading through in its entirety. And then we also have an easy link to the application portal. And that looks like this. So our login page here, our sign up page, is very easy to use. The sign up is just your email, create a password, Once you confirm it, you can move right into the process. I just want to point out this one little block that I've highlighted, which is my personal email address. Any questions, comments, concerns related to the portal, to the technical problems or issues you may have, hopefully not, you can direct to me and I will get back to you as soon as possible, keeping in mind this is still a newer system for us. So we want to make sure that it runs as smoothly as possible. Once you've created your account, you will notice that you only have this one block option, which is to create a profile to get started. And once you do that, you have 4 very simple fields. And something I'd really like to note here is this should really be the submitter's information. We ask more specifically about global good contact information, but this form specifically is how we will contact you if there are any issues with your application, if we have any modifications of the RFA, if we have reminders for you for deadlines coming up. So it is for the best if whomever is running the application process is the one who is completing the profile, since they will be getting the majority of contact from us. After you've completed the profile, you can move straight forward into the process. So now we have this nice big box with a plus sign to click. And once you get started, then this is your landing page. And this is the main page that we see for use when you're going through the application process. We have 3 application forms that filter up into the main application. You'll see that 2 of them are required and 1 of them is optional. So Carl briefly touched on the AWS credits. We want to make it clear that this is an optional form and submitting it or not submitting it does not impact the review of your application. It's just to expedite if you do choose to redeem those credits. The 2 forms that are required are the actual software questions and then the self-evaluation maturity model. So if you click open on any of these, the first one specifically pulls you into this page. And this is, these software questions are all in the full RFA in Appendix A. You can look at them in an Excel style format, a spreadsheet style format. This will hopefully keep our process very clean without a lot of need for interpretation on your end. I'd also just like to point out at the top right and also at the bottom of this form, we have 3 different boxes. It seems very self-explanatory, but if it makes anybody's life easier, I'll be happy. So if we save as a draft, we can always come back in, edit the form, do whatever we need to. If we click mark as complete, you cannot click mark as complete if there are any required fields that haven't been filled out. The difference between these 2 is that you have to click mark complete in order to be able to submit. So back on this page, this grayed out submit button at near the top, that'll turn green once both required forms are marked as complete. Once you submit, you cannot edit your forms. Up until you do submit, they are completely editable, no matter if you click save draft or mark as complete. So the important differentiation here is only to make sure your edits are done, regardless if you're marking complete before you submit. Going into the maturity model, the other required form, it looks just a tiny bit different where you have to click new item in order to open it up. And it matches 1-to-1 with the maturity model that we saw earlier. The instructions at the top are pretty straightforward. We also have a direct link to the Global Good maturity model, and it maps pretty simply. This maybe doesn't make it look that way. So we have the core indicator and then the sub-indicators in italics below it for each indicator category, and then the low, medium, high definition. And then on the right-hand side, the maturity level for that specific category. So the self-evaluation tool is to go through the core indicator, the sub-indicators, look at what matches, and then to the best of your ability, as completely and correctly as possible, indicating if that's a low, medium, or high maturity. Once you move past here, these 2 forms are both complete, marked as complete, and fully done. Then this nice green submit button becomes available to click. Once you do, again, just really want to emphasize, you cannot come back in and edit once that's submitted. It goes immediately into our under review folder. So make sure that everything you need and want to complete is done before hitting that button. I think that's just about it. This is my email again for any problems with the portal. And something to point out too, if you have questions about Notice G itself, the global goods aspects, the technical aspects, those questions are better directed towards Carl than me. This is just my email being repeated for the ease of use of the portal. So that's everything for our new process, and we're going to open up to questions now. So anything we've talked about, you can raise your hand, we'll call on you, or if you'd like to put your questions in chat, then Sophie will read them out for us or let us know.
Right. Well, thank you, Maria, and thank you, team, for staying around so far. We have about 20 minutes left in this. I am, sorry, please excuse me. So I see a few things coming up. There are a few questions that came up in the chat right now, and I'll deal with those first, and we'll take it from there. So one of the first questions that I see we've collected is from Stephen Wanya. Does funded by multiple sources include backed up, powered by a sustainable, successful business model? Stephen, yes. I think the idea behind the funding aspect is to ensure sustainability and also ongoing investment and support behind it. And so please feel free to make that as your case as you go through. The second question is around, if we're already a DPG, are we automatically considered? No, you are not automatically enrolled in the Notice G process if you're a DPG. You need to activate that application yourself, and because there are additional extensive criteria that we want to make sure you're looking at there. I see a question from Uber that's come in. How do global goods apply that have decentralized community approach? If there's no one responsible legal entity running the community, but many contributions, should they all apply? That's a great question, Uber. I don't have a clinically good answer for you right now in that one. So as we move through this process, I would encourage that within the community, you understand if it's a small enough community, maybe self-nominate a group to take this forward. However, I do see that there may be situations where there are multiple community subgroups applying for the same tool to get things in. And we will have to address that as it becomes a reality through the review cycle. I think at this particular stage, we want to review the global good listing itself for inclusion. If it comes down to the aspect of funding and investment, that will be an engagement with that particular community and seeing how things go forward. Great. I see another question that's coming. Can you please clarify the difference between G0 and G1 software and service? Okay, so let me clarify that. Then I'm guessing you mean G2, which is the service side of things. So software are open source tools that we're dealing with right now. They can be self-installed, they can be run separately. Services, we're clarifying the definition with our board and investors in the space, but it would be something that is more available, maybe not downloadable in terms of being used itself right now. That definition will come out, as you saw, by the release cycle in time for the latter half of, towards the end of this year, as we're addressing some key things there. Then can you apply if your DPG application is under review? Absolutely. We do not expect all the DPGs to be reviewed or are fully approved before you apply to this. That's why you'll note that the request is your registered or nominated DPG link. Particularly the DPG has its standards as the DPG standard with a range of criteria. There is some overlap around that. And as we're in continuous conversations with the Digital Public Goods Alliance about the future iterations of similar calls to have more seamless electronic data exchange. But to date, we're aligning the best we can between us in terms of more conversational and human exchanges there. All right, I'm running through these, so I'm hoping we're getting these pulled together. I see Nathan's got a question. Will Digital Square count implementations of software products outside the public health space that are still socially impact focused, such as climate change? Great question, Nathan. I think we aren't the ones doing the counting, but the peer review community is. I think in this space, what I'd be looking at if I was sitting in the PRC, and just as a note, no Digital Square staffs sit as part of the peer review committee. We're really facilitators of the space. Multiple implementations outside of the health domain could be a valuable indicator of the tool's maturity and ability to meet the need. We'd also want to see, are there opportunities where this tool is making an impact in the health domain, even if it's a good first stab into the particular place. You know, one can consider one could create some scenarios where you're finding a tool that is primarily focused at something like agri-tech and being hammered into a health position may not be the best solution that there is, but there could be very well, I know there are technologies in our global goods space which are making great inroads into different areas like EdTech and wildlife conservation. So that'd be great spaces to look at. Great. If our organization has multiple software that we want to submit as a global good, can we submit multiple softwares from one application account? I believe we can, Maria, if I'm correct in that. We can have multiple. This is from IntraHealth. I'm assuming that would be IRIS and Gopher, or the Global Facility Registry. That can be done from the same account, correct?
Yes, I actually believe your limit is 10 applications per account. So you have a little bit of leeway there if you decide to make 5 new DPGs in the next month.
And if you're reaching that limit of 10, please email Maria. We'll chat to you and figure out what the options are around that. If you've got 10 technologies that are running at scale, we also want to recommend that you don't separate out a suite of tools unnecessarily, but try really only register your distinct technologies, not just flavors of implementations like the red app and the blue app if they're both the same apps. The scale considers countries and states, why not population served? That's a great question, Greta. The measure of scale is something that is going to be quite qualitative in this particular space. We are actively working in our other teams and research spaces on, are there broader metrics that we can consider when looking at scale, because number of countries could be a different kind of scale compared to population served in terms of the ability of the tool to be used in different areas. So make the case. Again, this is why we use humans to review the aspects and look at things particularly, and not just automatically using computer algorithms to do the evaluations. Paula, when will the outcome of Notice G's review be known? This stage, we're aiming towards the end of this year, pending the amount of applications we get in under this particular stage. And we will hopefully, I am aiming to announce that once we get a better sense of the close of the number of notices, but tentatively, I'm expecting around late November, early December. That may change if we get 300 different applications for global good tools. Our PRC is going to have a very, very, very busy calendar Q4. I've got a question. Is there any restrictions or limitations to be a PG for the future development of a tool? I'm not quite sure of that question. I'm going to cycle back to that. Astrid, if you don't mind, I just want to move through. I see there are a few coming through. Maybe we can ask the question in the voice space.
Yes.
Are there any great? Are there any eligibility criteria for who can apply? Can we apply as an NGO from Europe who developed a global health tool? Nadine, that's fine. We have many global goods that are homed in organizations based in developed countries itself, but we want to make sure that these tools are serving the global space right now. So yeah, there are examples in our guidebook of technologies that are based like out of the US, out of Europe, and some out of Africa itself. So really a global representation of that. Okay, so from Hermit, you've mentioned that through this launch, Digital Square is also focusing on identifying new global goods and encouraging new teams to submit. In your case, you'd want to be approved as a global good. So are we eligible to apply? If your technology meets the criteria we've outlined in this presentation, and you're able to complete the application form as required, you're welcome to apply. It will be reviewed openly through this. Dana, that will be reviewed by the IRC. That question you asked is, what are the selection criteria around this? And that is being evaluated by the IRC, and we are working that out. So there's 2 questions here. Can we get support during the process for clarifications, not tech issues? Can we apply for G1 and G0 simultaneously? So let me start with the second. You can apply to each open notice call, but we will only open G1 towards the end, as indicated of the announcements. And you will have an additional notice process for that particular one. If you believe your technology is both content and software, that's an interesting design pattern. I'd be curious to see what that looks like. If you believe you're both service and software, sure, you can apply to both when G2 comes out in terms of software. In terms of support during the process, I think the question that would come out from that is, what type of support are you looking at. If it's technical support with the platform, you've got Maria's email address. If there are clarifications, there is a Q&A deadline where you're able to submit questions towards, and we'll have a look at what your questions are. But the information you are required to submit should be readily on hand from the tools that you have. Right. Is there a current list of digital health technologies that were previously registered as global goods? Yes, they're in the Global Goods Guidebook. Right, I'm going to come back. Astrid, you had a question that I wasn't quite clear. Would you mind just coming off mute and framing that for me quickly so I can try and respond, please?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, I'm sorry for the misclarification. No, yes, indeed. So what I wanted to say is that when you become a global good, you know, like for your software, service, or content, and I believe, and I'm convinced there is a lot of problems. I was wondering, and I'm sorry to ask that question, but is there any like cons, you know, limitation for the future development of your tools? So do we need to follow specific guidelines when you become global good, you know, like meanings like you cannot do that in the future. You cannot, you know, sell that specific services related to your software. You see what I mean? Or
I do. Thank you, Astrid. That's a great question. We are not an enforcing agency at all. We're a self-reporting and volunteering space. It's why we will continue to run refreshes of it, so that there are guidelines in terms of what organizations should be doing and what the tools need to represent to be registered as a global good and to maintain their global good status. For example, there is a do no harm policy under the DPG standard that you would need to consider. That are you able to meet that particular need or anything of those aspects? If you would consider the next generation of the tool is required to be open source, to be a software global good. How you license it, if you're under a business-friendly version and you have an open version and an enterprise version that is got commercial support, that's a sustainable business model. That's not a negative aspect. But if you close your technology off in the future, you will no longer retain the global good tag when we ask for a refresh on things. So it is really, you still curate and contain the direction your technology and solution is moving. We encourage you to participate in the community. We encourage you to be an active member of it itself and find value in it and continue to show your impact. But that's why we want to maintain the standard of when you are a global good, you are able to maintain what the definition of a global good is. Move that forward.
okay, perfect, very clear. Thank you so much, Carl.
Osama, I see there's a question. Can we give an example on contents? I'm assuming you mean content global goods. We're framing that up. It should be released, but historically, the content global good that we have listed is the open HIE architecture, and that can be found under ohi.org. You'll have an understanding. This is a Creative Commonsly released interoperability architecture for open source health information exchange. It's a pattern we're well aligned towards, and that's the one we've had registered to date. Right. Can we conditional DPGs, products be utilized by only low-income countries? I don't know how you'd enforce that under an open source license. You may be a service that definition needs to come out. So if you can apply, we'll review it in situ. I'm not sure I'll be able to answer that without more context. I see Emmanuel's got a question now. Are software considered as open access eligible to apply? So that's an interesting question, Emmanuel. Open source and open access generally mean two different things to me in this space, but you may want to look at how you're looking at this particular one. For a software global good, we want you to be aligned to an OSI approved license. You may be looking at content global goods, which if you're under a Creative Commons or a licensed aspect, that's great. Or a service global good, you may have an open access pattern, which is accessible to anybody in a particular region or at a well-functioning level, something like that. See how you map up to the functions and how you meet the definition is my best feedback right now. Sophie, I'm watching our list here. I think I have got every question. I'm hoping that is right so far.
Yep. I do have a last question, sorry.
Sorry, Kavita, we didn't
Yeah,
see a
I do
hand up.
have. No, I did lower the hand. I just got the question. Is it okay if I ask now?
Sure.
So how long does this process take, and when we'll come to know whether our product or our software has been selected or not?
Thank you. So as I mentioned, one of the earlier questions around this is we're aiming to try get some answers before the end of this year. It is pending on the amount of applicants we get in, and that we ensure we don't overload our peer review committee necessarily. So hopefully it'll come out before the end of the year. We will definitely know before March next year as to who will be invited to the Global Goods Innovators meeting. But I think it's exciting for us. It's exciting to update this information as soon as we're able to right now. So I am hoping for that end of November, beginning of December approach, and we will release the expected notification date as soon as we have a better handle on the load of what our team is going to be looking at.
Sure. Thanks.
Right. So I think as we slowly start to wrap up, there's one question that's always haunted me for the last few years as I've had the mantle of Deputy Director of Global Goods here at Digital Square. And that's, how do we answer the question, how do you become a global good? Historically, it's always been applied to an OOP process. If you match the requirements, you will be considered. What I'm excited to announce is that Notice G is the start of a more formal global goods application process. This is our first round of doing it. We are issuing it. We're excited to bring the community together. We have a range of exciting groups and individuals actively monitoring and really standing on the sidelines and cheering as we start looking at bringing this new team of global goods tools, solutions, and content together. But as we move forward into 2023, 2024, we will have an ongoing active process for new technologies to apply to be a global good. And this looks to address the question that we've had previously, like, what if I miss a notice? Is this only one time we can do it? The answer is no. We expect in 2023 for us to launch a more ongoing process that mirrors our friends and family, part of the DPGA, as to continue to identify global goods moving forward. So thank you, everybody. I think that is the end of it. We're going to give it a call today. We really appreciate your time. To summarize, this recording will be made available on our websites, and the slides will be posted on the wiki too, as well as links from the various pages that we have. We look forward to engaging with you and continuing the conversation as we move ahead. Thank you, everybody.